Hey there, in this video, we're just going to go over a few tips and tricks on how to try to limit the amount of cheating on your Google Form assessments. Now, many of you use Google Forms for things like quizzes, tests, and even final exams. And so we want to make sure that those are as secure as possible. One of the first things I'd like to talk about is when to release grades. Now, I recommend that you do not release grades until all of your students have taken the assessment. And so the, the reason I say that is because students will share answers to absent students, or if you are giving this assessment to multiple periods, they will share them from period to period and even year to year. So do not release grades until you're pretty much done with that assessment. Let me show you how to do that. So here I am in a quiz. Across the top, I have questions, responses, and settings. I'm going to click on settings. And then I'm just going to ensure that it says later after manual review. Another thing you may want to do is adjust the respondent settings. So if when you release it, you do not want the correct answer shown, you can untoggle that. I like to go ahead and leave it on. So that way when I am ready to release the scores, they can see that. But it is totally up to you. This one is often done without teachers realizing it. When you return scores in Google Classroom, it actually releases the scores to students, and they will be able to see all of the questions and answers. So again, I'm going to ask that you wait until all of your students have taken that assessment before you return the scores. And if you plan to give this multiple years, that you do not return them to Google Classroom. Let me show you what I mean by this. So here is my quiz. I've got my responses. I'm in Google Classroom, and I've imported grades. What I don't want to do is click the return button. As soon as I click the return button, those students will see it. And I can show you what that looks like in the student perspective. They will see their work over here. And when they click on it, they can see the questions and answers. If you do not check show missed responses or show correct answers, they will still see the question and the answer that they chose, and then they'll be able to see if they got it right by looking at the score. All right, so I do understand that having Google Classroom share grades with Aries is one of the benefits of actually using a Google form. So here is my only workaround for that. Go ahead and import the grades. You'll see the students in order, and then you could split screen with Aries and just manually 10 key that in. Or you could write it down and then 10 key it in. But I highly recommend you do not return them until you are finished giving that assessment. All right, this one's my favorite, locked mode. Many of you are already using it. The nice thing about locked mode is that when they're in locked mode in your class taking the assessment, they cannot open up another tab and try to look up answers to your test. You can find locked mode right here where it says Chromebook settings. Again, I'm in the settings tab, and I can turn that on. The nice thing about locked mode is it changes how the responses are managed and protected. So if I toggle this down, you'll see it collects email addresses. It doesn't send a copy of their responses to them. It doesn't allow them to edit their responses. It restricts it only to our organization and only one response. So I always have this on for an assessment. If you choose not to use locked mode, so you have this untoggled here, I would make sure that you make a few adjustments under the responses tab. So one, I would make sure that it collects email addresses. Two, I would make sure that this is turned off. Do not send them a copy of their responses. I would also turn off allow response editing. So this is after it's been submitted, they would be able to go back and change their responses. So make sure that's toggled off and then leave these two on. Limit to our organization and one response. All right, and the last tip I have for you is limit the amount of time your students can get into the assessment. Students will sometimes try to take assessments early. So if you post that assignment early, you'll want to make sure that you toggle off accepting responses. Okay, here I am on my quiz. We're going to go to the responses tab and we're going to uncheck this accepting responses so that it says not accepting responses. You're going to want to make sure that that is set to not accepting before and after your quiz. That way, if you have any absent students, they cannot take the quiz at home. All right, I hope you found those tips and tricks helpful. If you have any tips that I forgot, go ahead and email me and let me know so I can share that with others.